So, so I was asked a question of what the early days of kayak fishing were like, and man, that was a long time ago. Um, Closing in on almost 3 decades of doing this kayak fishing, and the early days, like when I first started. I never saw another person kayaking or kayak fishing for about 6 years where I lived in southwest Nebraska, and it was a way to explore the waters where I lived and fish and find peace and tranquility and all that on the water. And like when I would go, you just felt like one with the water, like you felt the pulse of the lake beneath you. And it fishing, if first started, I was just paddling, but then I started fishing, and I had no idea that people were kayak fishing in other parts of the country, but they were. On the internet, there wasn't much out there. There was Jim Salmons and Dennis Spike and Dean Thomas, D. Kaminsky, those people, Kevin Whitley, Kayak Kevin. There was Jeff Little. I didn't know any of them. I did reach out. Oh, there was Chad Hoover too, and I did reach out to them at some point and to learn more and see what they were doing. But for me, the early days, you took out one rod. Didn't have a crate because I had an old sit inside kayak, and one rod, a box of lures, and my life jacket, pair of pliers, and a paddle, man. And that's what you did. And it was very basic, very, very basic. There were no accessories. The accessories that we had, you made or created and made. And it was just so peaceful, The coolest part, though, was probably when I would go out, I would get into places that no one had ever been before. You couldn't really walk back there because it was kind of shallow, but there was some silt, so you would sink. I would go where no boats, nobody on bank had been before, and so these fish that I was catching had never seen a lure. In fact, I would pretty much get lost sometimes in the backwaters of these lakes, but it was so cool, and I would see things for the first time, and probably the only person that saw these things for the first time where I was at. Also, in the early days, I was able to take my kids. They were young, and we could go out and kayak fish, and we did trips, when we drove. But most of the time, everything was within 20 to 30 minutes of where we lived, and we would go explore. There were no tournaments out there. I started a tournament after 6 years and had like 12 people there, and it was really fun, and we got a cookout and stuff. But really the early days, it was just peaceful, and it was genuine. The activity was authentic. Sometimes now I tend to think that we've made it a little more complicated. As you can see in my kayak, I've got all the bells and whistles on this one. Went out today and caught fish, but the one thing that hasn't changed is the tug. The tug is always so magical, and whether you can see it or not. But the early days, I miss them because it was just so fun, and you learn so much every time out, where now you can pretty much go to the internet and figure it all out before you even go. But I would say that if you haven't gone, I encourage you to try it, because I've been out here all day fishing and enjoyed it. I saw some friends. Actually, I saw 3 people that I knew. Who would have thought that? I'm down in Kansas. It was the early days, though. It was a way to make friends. People were curious when you go to a gas station, ask you what you used them for. People were curious. You could hear them on shore talking about, what's that guy doing out there? catch fish in, like I said, in places where no one had gone. And sometimes I'd be the only one on the lake, especially in the summer when I was off from teaching. There would be nobody else out there, and sometimes that's the way I liked it, you know. So that's my synopsis, I guess, of the early days. Like I said, those are times I'll always cherish. So, thanks for listening.